Hello everybody, and welcome to this presentation, a rollercoaster ride, bus route maps for the Lijn. My name is Hans van der Maarel. I'm the owner of Red Geographics in the Netherlands, and I started Red Geographics back in 2004. We're a small consultancy firm aiming towards GIS and cartography. We produce maps as well, and basically just have fun with maps and geo stuff. I've been a MAPublisher user myself since 1997. And I've been an Avenza partner for pretty much that entire time. Aside from Avenza, we're also a partner of Safe Software, so FME, and we often use both MAPublisher and FME to work on projects. I say we because since 2019, Red Geographics is a team of 3. So aside from myself, I'm being helped by Inge van Dalen and Veerle Goossens. And with the 3 of us, we can take on any kind of larger project even. And this project that I'm going to be talking about is really a team effort. So there's a bit of all 3 of us in this project. And it's about producing beautiful route maps for the Lijn. The Lijn is the public bus and tram company for Flanders. So pretty much any kind of public transit within Flanders. Be it buses or trams or subways or light rail, it's done by the Lijn. They've got about 2,700 vehicles, and over 2019 they've had almost 200 million traveler kilometers. Obviously that's pre-COVID. And so Transient Networks are some of the hardest things to map. I'm sure we've all seen the beautiful London Underground maps by Transport for London, based on the designs by Harry Beck. I'm sure you all know the New York City subway map designed by Massimo Vignelli. And it's a lot of work to cram a lot of information into a small area of map. But first let's talk a little bit about how we actually got this project. So as I mentioned, Red Geographics is a partner for Avenza, which means that we kind of cover the Dutch-speaking market, so that would be the Netherlands and the northern part, the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. And a couple of years ago, 2019, we realized that we had quite a lot of customers in the Netherlands with quite a lot of licenses, and actually not that many, just a handful, in Flanders, which seemed kind of odd because it's, population-wise, economy-wise, culture-wise, we realized that there would have been more potential there than what we were currently supporting it in that region. So what we did is we took a list of all of our Dutch customers and then started compiling a list of comparable Flemish companies and organizations. We approached, I think, about 60 or 70 of them, and we invited them to an afternoon of MAPublisher and geographic imagery demonstrations in a central location in Flanders. So about 15 people showed up to that one, and we demoed MAPublisher, we demoed geographic imagery, we demoed Avenza Maps, we fed them typical Dutch pastries, which are chocolate balls filled with whipped cream, and I'm not sure whether that has something to do with it, but we actually got quite some good results out of doing that event. So a lot of the companies who were there actually turned out to be customers. And the Lijn was one of them. So in February 2020 they first ordered the software, MAPublisher and Label Pro. And then in June 2020 we started a project to develop a new workflow for them. And this workflow was to basically revamp the way that they were producing the route maps of their network. Now, and this is a kind of project that we often work on. We develop a workflow for a client, which quite invariably ends up being a combination of automating some stuff and doing some manual stuff. We think there's a fine line between automation and cartographic quality, and while we love automating stuff, we realize that you can't actually automate the entire map production and still have a high cartographic quality. So we want to find the right balance between those two. So automate the bits that are possible and save a lot of time there, and then let a skilled cartographer focus on the hard bits. Now looking at their current maps, as you can see, they're incredibly dense in terms of information. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and it's all done manual. So as I'm sure you can imagine, this takes a lot of time to do. This takes a lot of time to do right. So what we decided to do was automate the base map production, so the underlying maps, with Avenza MAPublisher. Easy peasy, it's all being supplied in formats that are supported by MAPublisher, so there's really nothing tricky there. Set up a couple of standard map themes and basically be done with it. Second thing we developed was an FME workspace that takes those bus routes and draws parallel lines for them. Because that was actually one of the most time-consuming parts about the original maps, is manually drawing those parallel lines. So those parallel lines that are coming out of the FME process, they're being styled with MAPublisher. The next step would be to automate as much as we can of the text placement using Label Pro. And then the end result would be not a finished map, but a nearly finished map that a skilled cartographer can then pick up and work with. It has never been our intention to fully automate the whole process. We've always been very upfront about that thing with the client, with the Lijn, and they are fully in support of that. Instead, we want to try and get as close as possible. So basically we're looking for ways that we can save time for the cartographers. Now the tricky part is, of course, that that FME workspace that takes the lines, takes all of the routes, and draws the parallel lines. So what we get in terms of source data is one line per bus route. So first we have to identify how many of them are sharing a single segment of road. Now if it's more than 10, their style guide says that we should bundle it into a single line. If it's anywhere between 2 and 9, they should be drawn as parallel lines. So the workspace to run that, just for fun, we tried running it on the entire dataset once, all of Flanders, and it took about 10 minutes. So that's pretty good actually. Now the trick with those parallel lines is that, of course, they have to be offset from the actual line, and we have to offset them in real-world units, in GIS units, in meters. But the distances depend on the scale of the map and the line weights on the map. And their style guide calls for different line weights for a different number of parallel lines. So this is an image copied from their style guide. And as you can see, as more lines are being added to it, the width of the lines, the weight of the lines, goes incrementally down. So 2 to 5 lines, they're all 2.5 points wide. As soon as you get 6 lines, you'll go to 2.3 points. 7 lines is 2 points, and so on. So that was one of the tricky things to deal with. The other thing is that there is a very, very slight white buffer in between the lines. So we had to accommodate for that as well. So one of the big challenges that we had, at least for developing the whole process, is just doing the mental math of all the different units. So we've got typographic points that are being used in the style guide, but we use meters in the data, so how does this translate with scale factors? Another thing is complex situations. So especially close to, like the central bus station of a town, there's going to be a lot of lines, and it's usually going to be in the center of a town, so the roads are going to be short, and there's going to be a lot of curves, and maybe the routes split quite quickly, and so it's complex situations. We haven't really found a way yet to do those consistently well, and right now the current process, we actually just basically delete any short segments and say, hey, this is better dealt with by a skilled cartographer. Another thing is that it's not always clear what data the organization has available. The people that we're working with, the department that usually makes those route maps, they are only aware of the data that's available to them for their old way of making the maps. But we may be able to use some other data that's available within the organization. And then there's also the challenge of we get the internal data, but that's not necessarily what the travelers who use the maps are going to see. So for example, any route that a bus takes from the depot to the central station to actually start the route, that's also a route in their system, in their data set, but it's a non-revenue route, so we shouldn't display it on the map. So trying to figure that out is another challenge. So currently we're at roughly this stage in the development of the process. And so this is obviously a much smaller town. We decided to start working with the easier bits first. And as you can see, there's a bundle of routes, so more than 10 routes sharing the same roads throughout the center of the town to the train station, with a couple of routes splitting off here and there. Now, our future plans for this are to improve the output quality on short segments. We feel that this is a point where we can improve our results, and by improving them, saving more time for the people who actually have to make the maps. The other thing is the bus stops. As you may remember, looking back at that original map, there was a list of bus route numbers for every stop. We want to be able to automate the generation of that list as well. Right now, all we have to go on is geometry. So we have the locations of the bus stops, and we have the bus routes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if a route is passing by a bus stop that the bus actually stops there as well. And that's not even accounting for situations like overpasses or tunnels. Fortunately, we've just given access to some new data, which actually includes which route stops at which bus stop. And it's an ongoing process. We're obviously not done with this yet. We will always continue to improve this and work with the Lijn to get the best results. So in conclusion, using FME in combination with MAPublisher can save you a lot of time in your cartographic production process. It also helps to introduce more consistency. If you don't need to manually draw those parallel lines anymore, you can't make any mistakes in doing that either. And this lets the cartographers focus on the bits where their skills are really necessary, are most useful. So thank you very much. If you have any questions about this project or any of the other projects that we've done, please feel free to reach out. And keep on mapping, I would say.